Good afternoon. Thank you. This session is being recorded. This is Tuesday, April 3rd, about 3:42 p.m. Our topic today is retention. And this is one of those sessions that was designed for the tools for success. It follows our convention theme. And I need to just a couple of housekeeping things before we get on. Please turn off your cell phones, your pagers, or put them on vibrate. And if you start jumping up and down, we know what you did. It is being recorded. If we have any, get back to the discussion area, question and answer period, please come up and we'll try to run the mic to you. We want to get everything on tape so we know who you are and what your bright idea is to help retain people so we can share it with the rest of the world. My name is Tom Rudebach. I'm moderator of your panel for this afternoon. I've been calling for about that many years. Call for 3 clubs, teach for 3 clubs, call for many clubs in the area. Most of the clubs in eastern Ohio, where I am from, hire a caller to teach their clubs for their new dancers, and then you will get, depending on how many dances a year they have, you will get some of those dances, and then they hire guest callers for the rest of them. Once again, our topic today is retention. We want to, Dave's going to share some ideas with you. I've got a few ideas to share, and we want to get your ideas, what's working for your club in your area. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists today, Dave Clay, excuse me. I know a Dave guy. Dave Clay, who is from Nottingham, England, calls for 3 clubs over there, a Plus Club, Plus DBD, and a Challenge Club. So I know Dave's got some good ideas to share with you, and then we will, I have a few things to share, and then we'll open it for questions and answers.
Okay, can you hear me okay out there? Good. You'll have to stay with me because I've got a very sore throat and chest, so if my voice disappears, you'll just have to read my lips. How about that? Okay, just like they normally do when they're dancing. Okay, it's nice to be here. It's a tough subject, retention. I think everybody who's turned up obviously wants the secret. You want the answer to retention. I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed because there isn't an answer to retention. And as Tom said, we're going to look to you to make an input as much as we're making, because what you've got to say may be new to us. I've been around for 51 years. If I'd have had all the retention I wanted, I would have the biggest clubs in the world, I guess. But the strange thing is that most clubs actually seem to get to an optimum level and never really go any further. I don't know why, but that's the way it seems to be. The subject details on the program said that we should discuss methods such as social activities, music variety, entertaining choreography, recognition of club members, and keeping fresh ideas, and keeping it fresh, exciting, and feeling new. Well, it's easy to say those things. Let's look at entertaining choreography first. Entertaining choreography is different things to different people. Very, very different. And if I ask you a question, maybe you'll try and answer it for me as well. Your ideas on entertaining choreography. Does this mean more difficult choreography? How do we find more entertaining choreography without it being more difficult? Has anybody got any input on that? Any suggestions? That's good. Are we okay, Tom? You can come in if you want. You could hold the microphone there. Because I asked that question particularly for my own benefit, because I have always found it a dilemma as to what entertaining choreography is. The type of entertaining choreography which I've delivered has tended to be in the more difficult bracket. And it's still entertained. And it's still entertained a certain group of people. But it doesn't entertain everybody. So are there different people wanting different things? Okay.
Recently we did a dance where we invited a lot of our older, let me say former members back in, and some of them hadn't danced for years, and it doesn't take very much. Put people in a Sicilian circle, I'm sure you all know what that is, and just do very simple stuff, but then move them on to the next, and it's just something different than a lot of people have seen recently. Very simple things like that can do it, or move people to another square and back, but it doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay. Would everybody agree with that? Doesn't have to be complicated. But what happens when you've had a club? You've had a club for many years. Many of the members within your club have been in the club for many years. Are they still going to be entertained by the Sicilian Circle? Sorry? Okay, once a year. Yeah, that's fine. That's a special night? No, but maybe once a year we're going to give them something a little bit different. Now, what about the other 51 nights? How are we going to keep them entertained? You're going to say something to me. Good.
John Marshall, Sterling, Virginia. One of the things that I feel like we forget is that good dancing, enjoyable choreography is still entertaining in and of itself. And maybe you don't change a figure or a pattern that works well, dances well, but perhaps you change the music that you lend to it. And that gives it a different flavor completely, and let that music work for you to entertain the dancer, even though it's some of the same patterns. And there's also a definite comfort level in going through combinations that the dancers know. For one thing, it helps them to feel more competent and at ease. And so one variable is not the choreography, perhaps, but the music.
We had a question just here.
Barbara Burton from Oklahoma, and it's not a question. Theme dances during the year, if you're calling for the same club, just throwing something different in. My husband does what he calls a hat dance. He puts on a hat from a different country, calls a singing call from that country. It's an all-singing call dance. Dancers love the all-singing call dances because they're dancing the same movements or the simple movements. They get to have fun. They like the music. And, of course, it's silly for him, but, it's entertaining, and that's something different. But we do theme dances a lot. Try to do at least once a month.
Yep. I agree with what John was saying there, that choreography itself is not the only thing that entertains. Absolutely not. And the music does play a part. We can probably bring that in later. But I've always tended to go for the interesting style choreography and had a fair bit of success with it, till more recently, as the dancer has got older and the choreography slowed down and your timing becomes more difficult, particularly if you want to put content into singing calls, because everybody needs more time to do the dance. So we're taking calls out as our dancers get older, not putting them in. Okay, but there are probably two different types of dancers. There are the dancers who want stimulation through choreography, and there are dancers who want the party style stimulation. Can we mix these two together? We can successfully, I see you nodding at the back there, be interesting. I find that is one of the problems, that mixing the dancer who enjoys the higher type of choreography tends not to be in the same group as the dancers who enjoy the party style atmosphere. Does anybody else find that? Nobody even thought about it. The party type club has tended to work, I feel, on the lower level of choreography. And I mean, this is the most important thing here we're getting to is this the answer? Because they are often the biggest clubs, the ones who do use the parties and do use the less complex choreography that takes less commitment from the dancer. But we've got to get our audience right if we're going to entertain. But very difficult. Now, when I first started, I thought music obviously plays a part. The choreography for me was the most important thing. And then the achievement, the dancer achievement from getting success from the choreography bred success within the group. They actually liked that. But it did attract a certain type of dancer. Okay. go on to what John was saying about music. We can use the same piece of choreography with a different piece of music. And there's a lot of talk today about alternative music. But let me ask you another question. Is alternative music everybody's cup of tea? Well, that's good to know. Because you can get the feeling that if you're not using alternative music, you're really off the rail here, You should be doing this. I would say with a lot of the older dancers, the alternative music isn't as pleasant to them as the more rhythmic style we used to use in the past. So again, you've got a dilemma. What type of music do you use? And I think the important thing is, one, you've got to use a lot of music. That is absolutely essential. It's no good having 10 records and expecting to last a lifetime. You've got to keep up to date with your music. You've got to pick your music. And what fascinates me is the old music still lives. If you look at the latest releases, look on Sting, and you see all the old numbers coming back in again. These are all the sing-along style numbers. And these are the ones that people enjoy because they can sing along, because they can recognize the tune. And a lot of the sort of rocky type numbers are less popular with a lot of groups. They're okay for a Saturday night. If you're doing a special and the caller gets the opportunity to get up there and throw himself around. But it doesn't go down that well in the club if you turn up with all the rock numbers and start leaping around your own stage in the club, because they all think you've gone mad. So you've got to work your balance of your music all the time within your clubs. Apart from music, choreography, and success, what are the factors are the ones you should be looking at when you're trying to retain people? I've got a number of points down here. I've got some other factors here. One is making friends. Is this a big feature for square dancers? Is it a big feature for most people who go out to an activity? Do you encourage them to get to know people? It's pretty tough, actually, in some clubs, making friends. And I'll quote this example because it always amuses my Swedish friends. The Swedes are very, very interactive. They change their partners every tip almost. They all swap over. It's a nightmare as a sight caller. Believe me, because they've all got club outfits on as well. They're all dressed in the same color, but they're changing partners every time. I don't think it should be allowed. I think CALLERLAB should. I think they should step in here. But they're tremendously socially interactive. The other thing
Maybe you need to supply them with vests for your...
Yes. Well, I've always believed that should happen anyway, that every dancer should wear a number on the back. Yeah. But they frequently in their clubs don't have chairs. They go to dance. And in between tips, they stand and talk or they move to the next square. Of course, we like to sit down. In England, I quote England particularly, we like to sit down in our clubs. And they like to sit down and have a natter and do a little bit of knitting and whatever they do. Anything to keep them going. She's laughing down there because she knows the truth. But the other thing, the amazing thing, I was talking about friendship, making friends. The incredible thing about the British club, everybody sits in the same damn place every week. You can go out and put the names on the chairs before the club starts. I see you nodding at the back there. Does that happen to you too? Not just England, thank goodness. You could almost run a prize draw, couldn't you? So this one's Mary's and this whatever. But you could put the names on the seat. Friendship, fun and friendship. They love it. They're sitting with their friends. You get a stranger in. Come in through the door, and you're the caller, and you think straight away, uh-oh. They come early, and they look, and there's lots of empty seats because they're early. And you're thinking, don't sit there. That's not a good idea. Even to the point where you go down, and you say to them, I tell you where to sit. Come and sit over here because nobody else sits here. These people want to meet people, but don't sit where Ethel sits because that's her chair. And yet we still talk about fun and friendship. You're welcome as long as you can dance in that corner. Get in there. But there we go. That's the way they are. So how we get them to make friends, I don't know. I suppose really most of them perhaps come through with the beginner group. So they probably come with a graduated group. So they come on their own. But they tend to be on their own. I quote another example. And all this leads to retention because they're all factors that we have to take into consideration. We're fortunate. We have 2 rooms. One is at the top of the other. The top is a small room, and it's at the end of the main club hall. And my partner, she teaches the dancers. I do the calling for the club. So at half time, they join the group. Right from day one. At half time, they come in for their coffee, and then they join the main group. Well, for years, this was one hell of a problem because all the empty seats were at the top of the hall. So they would come out of this room, and all the new ones would sit at the top. Quite naturally, they're the only spaces. So when they got up to dance, they were all the new dancers. And new dancers are traditionally nervous. They find it hard to make friends in the first instance. Of course, all these people below them are whizzing around like maniacs. They know what they're doing. And the new dancer looks at them and is immediately intimidated by them. So it's something which we've got to look at. Now, what we did, and this may not work for you, but what we did, and this was something we developed from working with the advanced and challenge groups, who always work the number system, where they mix the squares. We started to do this in our mainstream plus clubs. So everybody comes in, they go on the computer, they get a square every tip. Those people who come in from the back, or the ones who are a little bit nervous, or the singles. I mean, this is great for singles, because you will always have single men, single women, whatever, but the single lady will go on the computer. So long as you've got your numbers balanced, when her turn comes up, she simply takes any spare man who is sitting out. And the men know that. Now that is good for singles. She never gets left out of a dance. She doesn't have to rely on a man to ask her to dance. She goes in the square, the caller then says, we have a lady wanting a partner. So that's something you might bear in mind for keeping your group well integrated. It worked. We didn't know whether it would. We thought they would resent it, particularly as it came down from the challenge areas. But they got to the stage now where if you don't run the numbers, they don't know where to go. You can have 2 squares there some nights. And you would think it would be easy for 2 squares to stand up and dance. No, because it doesn't. They haven't got something which says square number 1. And they go, where do we dance, Dave? Are we not on the numbers? No, just please yourself. We can't do that. So it just goes to show how dependent they do become in these things. And comfortable with them as well. Nobody ever says, oh, thank goodness we haven't got the numbers. You know, they say, we can't dance, so I haven't got a number. So, give it a thought. It's worth trying. Okay, so making new friends. That helps them make new friends. It puts them in new squares every time. It stops your square stacking. It stops your experienced dancers pushing the newer chickens out, particularly those who are not as strong as some. Strength of your dancers, again, is a big factor when it comes to retention. If you've got weaker dancers, you can frequently have problems because after a couple of weeks, dancers get used to them, find they're all weaker, and they tend not to encourage the weaker dancers. We've got to get that message over to the dancers as best we can. I don't know how. They still pay this astronomical amount to come and dance with us. You know, whatever it is, $3 or $4. My God. But they pay this princely sum, and you would think they'd paid for a football match. And they shouldn't be dancing with people who don't know what they're doing, or one-legged Annie, you know, who can't get from one side of the square to the other. What do we do with her? I mean, what do we do? We're talking about retention. She's putting off more squares than we're getting in the club. She's been in the club 39 years. What do we do? I don't know. Perhaps we shouldn't have gone there. Okay. They want to belong to something. I mean, they want to belong to something. They want to belong to a group. We want them to belong to us. And the way things worked in the old days, you belonged to a club. That was your club. You wore your club's badge. You supported your club's activities. You didn't normally, in those days, dance elsewhere. Today, they dance 5 nights a week from day one. They dance in 5 clubs. How do you get club loyalty in 5 clubs? I don't know. But that was a factor we used to have. So it's something we really need to be encouraging. Now, we want to be doing it through quality of dancing and quality of enjoyment within the club, obviously. But if we're falling slightly short then we've got to look at other options. We've got to look at party nights. We've got to look at 4th of July. We've got to look at Halloween. We've got to look at Christmas. We've got to look at Easter. These are all important. The dancers mostly enjoy specials, even fancy dress, except the experienced dancers who've been through it for the last X number of years. They're the ones that, oh, not again. When they first did it, they thought it was a good idea. You know, we've had things like glove dancers and hat dancers, and you'd have to decorate the best decorated glove or the best decorated shoe, whatever. When we first did it, they thought it was tremendous. You try it again, and the same people will say, oh, no. But the new ones who come in, they think that's great. And it's the same with calling. Join your hand, circle left, squeeze a hand. Oh, now squeeze your partner's hand. Everybody laughs. Everybody thinks that's hilarious. You know, oh, now squeeze my partner's, because I was squeezing my quarter's hand. But the experienced dancer, the one who's been in the club for goodness knows how long, it's old hat to him. But it still worked for the new dancer. All those old gimmicks still work for the new dancer. So here's a radical suggestion. We kick out all the experienced dancers. If you want to retain your new dancers, get rid of them. They're dynamite. And I'm partly serious here because I have this idea in my own mind. We have too many experienced dancers dancing with our groups. Fine if they're nice people. Fine if they're helpful people. Fine if they're just suddenly going through their 38th beginner's course as an angel and they love it. That's good. But by and large, they do get in the way. And then you also get, the other problem is the complexity starts to bleed down because you try to entertain the experienced dancer. So you're calling material, which is just a little bit above the poor old new infiltrator into the group. That is really tough. So we pride ourselves in that within our mainstream and plus group, we have C3B dancers, C3A dancers, C2 dancers, C1 dancers, and A2 dancers. Aren't we lucky? There's nobody else. There aren't any new people down below. These people from C3B and whatever, they're having a great time, dancing plus. But they're dancing a level of plus which is unattainable by the newer people coming in. So we've got to be careful. Maybe encourage our people to leave. Move on. Time you got out. We need the space. You've got to be firm. They've got to go. Same with the callers. You've got to go. You just ain't doing your job anymore. You've been in the game too long. You're too good at it. You're not as enthusiastic as you were. You've lost the buzz. Well, I used to walk around as a kid when I started. I'd be walking down the street going, well, your partner's corners, 2, circle to the left, go round you, do, element left with your left. People thought I was mad. Right to your partner. That was great. I was learning to call. And I wanted to call. And I used to go to dances with my record box. You remember that? Anybody else remember that in the old days? Where the caller, you can remember the old days, yeah? The caller turned up with his record box. Sometimes he actually went in with it, depending how useful it was. The other time he just left it in the trunk of his car in case they asked him. But if they didn't, he nudged them like, I've got my records in the car. You know, we wanted to call. Nowadays they say, you want a guest call? I said, no chance. Most callers don't want a guest call because they don't want putting in a strange situation. But we did in the old days because we loved what we were doing. And I think some of that buzz has gone. We've got to recapture our own enthusiasm if we're going to keep our dancers going. Now, I'm sure everybody here is enthusiastic. Everybody. You must be. You've got clubs. You know, you're all doing what's required. Okay. Leadership. Important factor. Lead from the top. We used to do that too when we were younger callers. We used to go to the dancers with them. That's why you had a crowd of your club turn up at a dance. If you went to a special attendance dance, the barrel dance where you won it because you had the most members, the caller was always with his dancers. You know, he turned up with them. He set an example. Now, the caller's either too busy. If he's a successful caller, he's going to be out of town. If he's not, he's going to be at home with his feet up. Because he goes out 3 nights a week anyway. He doesn't want to go out on a Saturday night. So that's something else which may have changed. Get out with your dancers. Have fun with your dancers. That'll encourage them. Recognize what they achieve. It's easier for some than others. Americans, you are fantastic at recognizing achievement. I can't praise you enough. I couldn't believe it when I first came to CALLERLAB, how much time you spent saying thank you and well done. That's a great, great thing. In England, you're lucky if you get a nod of the head. After 50 years, they say, well, goodbye. And I think that is so sad. So recognition is extremely important in making your group survive as a group. Make them feel appreciated, make them feel wanted. And get them involved. Okay, it's easier said than done when your club's struggling, you're down to the last square. Nobody wants to be chairman. But you might have bigger clubs than that. So you need to get your dancers involved. I don't know how many of the clubs in the States are call a run. No idea. It's just a balance. How many of the clubs you call for out here are call a run? How many are committee run? No, I see significantly higher. I think that is also a measure of success as well. Generally speaking, I think committee run clubs tend to get more loyalty from their groups. They don't have the same vested interest as the caller does. He's going to push you towards his activities. All dance instructors do that. Ballroom dance, whatever. They want you to attend their dances, whatever. A committee is neutral. You know, they'll just take you where they think's the best place for you to go. So, okay. I think also we've got to get the dancer, in terms of retention, to look at increasing the investment he makes in the activity. Now, that can be an investment in time. It doesn't have to be a capital investment. But he's got to make some investment. I know in the old days, we were always committed to some weekend or other ahead of time. We booked for the club vacation, or we booked for the club weekend, or we booked for the national. That's a good way of retaining your dancers because they're planning to be here in a year's time. So bear that in mind. It's one of the ways. Encourage them to book ahead and commit themselves. Are you still dressing in your groups? Squad and stress? Has it gone out the window now? Sorry? We're trying to get it to go out the window. You're trying to? Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a caller's point of view, isn't it? You know. Yeah, well, I was 14 when I started. And I couldn't wait to put a Western belt on. And my first wife couldn't wait to put her dress on in those days. And she was 18 years old. Some people still enjoy wearing square dance dress. They really do. But the only reason I was making that point was, if people make the commitment to dress, then they've spent money on the activity. They're less likely to give up at the easiest opportunity. So in that sense, it's a little bit sad. Perhaps we can find an alternative. Okay, so any special clothing is debatable now in terms of investment. Commitment to forward activities, we've talked about that. What about setting targets and standards? Do we avoid everything now when we're talking to our dancers? Do we tell them where graduation leads them? Down which dark path? I mean, it's like Dungeons and Dragons, really, square dancing, isn't it? You know, we actually don't tell them these things today because we think if we tell them, they're going to quit. What do you mean it takes 2 years to become a plus dancer? I don't think I'll bother. And you really can't blame them for that either, because they really ought to be dancing after the first year. They really did, but we've punished our mainstream so much, we don't really have the mainstream dancers. So we have to push our dancers now on to plus, almost as the entry activity. And that's a tough entry activity for new dancers, to send them out on a Saturday night without body armor. Okay. We've talked about keeping people too long. Okay. I like that one. I think that one's the best one personally. But we have 2 other things I want to mention finally. 2 types of dancers in your club. The one who doesn't achieve very well. The one everybody avoids. He's the hand grenade. You throw him in a square and he blows it. Then you've got the terrorists. These are your selfish, higher level dancers who were quite prepared. Oh yeah, quite prepared to dance in the plus club. We're quite prepared to dance with the beginners, providing they can learn 75 calls in one night from all positions. And Lord help them if they don't. And the first time they go wrong, they growl at them. And they're always big men, but they turn around and growl. Sometimes you've got to look at these and say to yourself, well, are these guys worth keeping? Or should we maybe talking to them quietly on the side? I don't know. Perhaps Ronan is dealing with difficult people is probably the subject there. But they are a problem, and you've got to have your eyes open to them. I mean, I see it happening in my clubs, and they scare the hell out of me. We lost 6 dancers in 12 months. Out of a small club, 6 dancers walked, not because of the caller, because they went back to one of my other clubs, but they walked out of this particular club because of one person. Not him and his wife, just him. And nobody saw him do it, but I see it. You see it as a caller. You hear all the whispers as called. Oh, God, not her again. Not her in the square. Not a decent dance all night. You know. And they say it deliberately to the dancers. So if you're going to retain members, you decide whether you're going to retain a squarer or retain one bad-tempered member. Okay, so watch out for your hand grenades and your terrorists. Hope I've stimulated some of your thoughts. I can hand back now to Tom, and we'll take it again from the floor and see if we can come to any more conclusions. Okay, Tom.
All right. How about a nice hand for Dave?
Thank you.
Hopefully, hopefully he has stimulated some thoughts in your mind. We didn't do a whole lot of talking in preparation for this, but some of the things he mentioned, I think, will help stimulate your thoughts. And one of the things I wanted to mention, and CALLERLAB has done some research about dropouts and retention. In the 1950s, about 42% dropped out after the first year. As late as in the 1990s, it was 51% or a little higher after the first year. And we lose another 20% after 2 years. We need to keep people in our clubs. As part of the work I did in preparation for this, I sent an email out to about 100 people, give or take, on my email list, and I know it was forwarded to some. I asked for responses. I told them what I was going to do, what I was doing. I asked them for responses as what have you seen work in either your club or in a local club as far as retention? Why is it working? Why isn't it working? And what would you like to see done different, or what can be done different? I got a handout I'm going to let you have afterwards. It's nothing that you need to study while you're here. I got 11 pages of responses from various clubs. The only editing I did not correct any English spelling, punctuation. The only editing I did was I took out personal names, club names, and local communities, so that unless you wrote me one of these articles, you won't know where they came from. I will say that I don't think I have anything here from west of the Mississippi. It wasn't intentional. It's just the way it happened. But almost all over the eastern United States. There's one big theme that runs through all of these. Not everyone, but through all of them. Friendship, friendliness, being friendly to club members, being friendly to new dancers, that interrelationship of whether it's a club night or a theater night, but friendship, greeting people when they come in the door, thanking them when they go out the door. And the more I thought about this as I was preparing for it, as I tried to look at the successful clubs in the area that I'm working at, this is the key theme in why they are successful. They greet people, they talk to people, they do some other things besides square dance as a club. And they talk again, I talk to people, I mentioned that, thank people when they go out the door, thank them for coming. Several years back, I was teaching for a club, and I was at one of their club meetings, and I said, would you want to belong to this club? During their new dancer sessions, and I'm a great believer in having these people dance from the first night, but in their new dancer sessions, when we take a break, the club members would be over here, the new dancers would be over here. I said, would you want to belong to this club? The club's still going, but it is struggling. We want to get some of your ideas. We want to share them with the world. This is going on a tape. I'm sure that there's things working in your communities, or you have seen work maybe in other clubs, that we can share with other people. This is a sharing organization. Dave mentioned recognition. This is another factor that clubs need to do in recognizing their people, whether it's something one of the club members did maybe in their vocation, maybe not a square dance activity. Yeah. But say Dave got a promotion in his job, if he's even still working. But say he got a nice promotion. You need to recognize that. Maybe it's just nothing more than, like Bear said last night, I got a grandchild on the way. And we didn't forget that. How many times did he tell us? But this is something we need to do in creating the enthusiasm and the interest within our clubs. We can't just say one night, well, we got to be more friendly. And forget it. I was talking here with some other callers about this very topic. And unfortunately, I think it is the way part of our generation is. Many of our people now are homebodies. They're sitting in front of that computer, and when they get out among people, they're not quite sure how to act or react. Many of our people from research has shown that we are not, the generation that our target audience are not joiners. CALLERLAB has done some research that shows that this baby boomer and the Xers are not joiners. They want instant gratification. And if you think back, many of these people come out when instant mashed potatoes, McDonald's, Wendy's, drive through the window, please me now, and then we're going to move on. I wish I had answers. Dave wishes he had answers. But we want to get your input on some of these things that have worked in your area.
Just to add to...
So we can share them.
A brief point is, look at some of your successes. Don't look at all your failures. Go back and look at your club registers. Look how many people have been in the club and how long they've been in your club. We did it with our group. Out of a 3.5 square group, we'd got 60% of them had been in the club over 20 years.
Wow.
Now that's success. You're talking about retention. If you're keeping dancers in the activity 20 years and more, and there are many people who've been dancing in the activity for 20, 30, 40 years. So we've done something right somewhere. I suspect we're also confusing retention with recruitment. We can't retain what we don't get in. Sorry.
Susan Morris from Redmond, Washington. Two things. One is keeping the newer dancers dancing. A club that I'm the associate caller of, for the last 4 years, I've done 12 to 16 weeks of workshops immediately following mainstream lessons. And it's purely optional. Come when you can, come as often as you want to. The people out of the newly graduated class that came are still dancing with the club. The ones that don't aren't. So keeping them dancing, giving them more floor time. This particular club also does at least 2 social events that are totally non-square dance related. Once in the winter around Christmas time and once in the summer, which has kept dancers dancing.
Chris Day from Manchester, England. We have 2 clubs. One is a brand new beginners. Previously we've had beginners in our main club, but we have so many levels that we are teaching, from basics up, that they decided they didn't want them this time because we would lose some of the top end. So we recruited, and we had 3 taster nights, and we had 72 dancers. And we've kept 52 of them. And we said from the very beginning, we want some angels. So we got 6 squares of angels the first few nights. But we have 3 squares of angels that love to come on a Monday on the main beginner's night, because it is absolutely a social. There's no politics. And they prefer it. And the new ones say now, wow, we didn't realise that square dancing was so involved, because we have so many social things. Everyone comes on the microphone and they announce a coffee evening. We do monthly walks, meals, we've got a beetle drive, all sorts of things. They say, oh, is this square dancing? We didn't realise it was so involved. Keep them interested. Lots of things on.
You've got a different scenario in North America, I suppose. You've been used to big crowds. You've been used to big clubs. In England, we've been used to piecemeal recruitment. We've had to fight for every couple we can get. And you're now starting to work the same way, because they're not rolling in anymore. So retention becomes even more important if you're going to keep what few you get in. I mean, I danced back in 1980. My good friend from Texas here, from Fort Worth, I came over and danced in his club. You couldn't get inside the place. He had a hall 6 times as big as this, and they were bouncing off the wall. Now, they can't find odd couples. So you've seen a massive shift. I mean, we've seen a drop in our dancing attendance, but nothing like you. You must really be scared. But I still think some of it comes back to callers. Callers and calling enthusiasm. If you look at a lot of your best callers, who are now national callers, not too many of them are running new clubs. Not too many of them are teaching beginners. And they are the best callers. But they don't have the time to go back. I call 3 nights a week, but I don't call a class, because I don't want to go out a 4th night. And I think if every single caller went out this fall and started a class, you would see a big input of dancers. I'm not saying everybody would be massively successful, but if every caller went out and recruited, you'd get more people in, more to retain. You were going to say?
Yeah, Dennis O'Neill from Silverthorne, Colorado. I've had some really good luck in the last 2 years. I just started 2 years ago, so. But I think the important thing is to have fun with your people. Make sure that, first of all, we quit doing the normal recruitment thing, which was go out and try to get people for lessons. and because we were only getting 3 or 4 people at a time and couldn't keep them. And so 2 years ago, we decided to do a free chili dinner and an introduction to square dance. And we recruited for a night of entertainment and had high energy music, lots of fun. In the middle of all that, we tell them about lessons, because then we showed them that square dancing can be fun. It's not what they thought it was 40 years ago. And then we get them into having fun, and our club mingles and dances with them. And the fun part is enjoyable. But one of the things we do, and you touched on that, is I do lessons twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, just the last 2 times. And then we dance our regular dances on the first and third Saturdays for our mainstream people. From the very beginning, every dance that happens during their lessons, they're invited to. And they become connected socially. It takes the pressure of learning calls off, because we use guest callers. Before the guest caller gets there, I give them a list of here's what they know. The first dance, after 4 lessons, they get a half hour. After 8 lessons, they get an hour of the regular dance. And after 12 lessons, they're dancing all night long. And without that pressure of having to learn, they're just dancing and reinforcing what they already know. But they become socially connected to the club, and they don't want to be anywhere else now, because now it's fun, and they're not waiting, for 10 weeks or 28 weeks to learn to be able to go to this dance that you've recruited them for, but you won't let them come until they're at some quality of whatever the older dancers, as you say, those guys we need to kick out of the club, But I see those people that you discussed about. I go to other clubs, and I'm always dancing in the back of the hall with their new dancers. The people from that club are not dancing with their new dancers, which is wrong. And it's a mindset that the older square dancers have to change. And the same with here in Colorado, we have basically mainstream clubs. But I got people who go back east, and they're getting tested before they can join the Plus Club, because, you either dance Plus or you don't dance at all. And that's, I think, square dancing is shooting themselves in the foot with this straight through shot to Plus. But
yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Shooting straight through the Plus is the entry level. But more important is what we're trying to do is cram in to a very short time space a lot of calls, but a lot of extension to calls. We're not satisfied now within teaching our dancers simply to dance. They've got to dance boys' position, girls' position, 2 boys, 3 girls, whatever the case may be, in abstract positions as well. Our expectation has grown and grown and grown. And personally, I think our expectation is too high of our new dancers. We can all boast our own case. We can all say, my dancers are, they're wonderful all-position dancers. Then if they are, that's because they're good dancers. And if they're not, it's because they're either poorer dancers or you're trying to get them to do too much. We learned to dance. We spent the next 4 or 5 years still learning the dance. That was the fun of it, is there was always something new coming up. Now, just like modern society today, it was said earlier, everybody wants it on a plate. The square dancer wants it on a plate. Well, the caller wants it on the plate for the square dancer. We think it's good for them. But I was the biggest advocate of all-position dancing all my life, all my calling life. I am not any longer. I think we've got to go back and give these guys a chance to dance and go out on a Saturday and get some recognition for what we've achieved, to enjoy ourselves and not be set up by the callers to be knocked down, and also by the experienced dancers. We've got to give them a chance to get out on a Saturday night or on our weekends and succeed. There's too many dancers failing, in my opinion. Okay.
My name is Cindy Shane. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a dancer. But at our club, what was killing our club was the politics in the club. to the point that we were down to one square. Our caller was discouraged. You could tell his calling and choreography was just falling down and down and down. We were about ready to fold, and at that point we had to make some decisions on what we wanted to do. We had plenty of money, but just the politics. So we decided that we were going to have what we call a president of the month. So we passed around, so the politics went out of the whole thing, because if you didn't like the way so-and-so did it this month, you've got your month next month to do it. It invigorated the club. It invigorated the caller to where he got enthusiastic. He started really improving his choreography and really having a good time, which made the club have a good time, to where a lot of the Louisville area likes to come to our club because they have a lot of fun. So that's kind of what we did.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. And the choice also of the people who are sponsoring or looking after the club, some people call them club managers or whatever they might be. We actually had a similar experience, but we changed our club manager 2-3 years ago. There was a nice couple in the group who were starting to help more. And it's not a democratic club, but we always have a club manager. And they took over about 3 years ago. Up to that point, it was starting to get dull. But from the moment these two people took over, they injected their personality into the club. And they have a very caring personality. And he's always at the door to greet every lady who comes in. He kisses every woman who comes into the building, whether she's a square dancer or not. Shakes hands with every person as they arrive. You can't imagine the difference it made to the group. They're a happier group. I'm happier. Okay.
I just had a question on that. Are they still doing the President of the Month now?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, like I said, I agree with everything you do. The greeting stuff and recognizing everybody. We recognize birthdays and anniversaries, and if somebody is sick or somebody has something great happen, people love to hear about that stuff. And I know it works because my first class I taught was 37 students, and I had 30 of them this year helping me recruit for this year's group, which turned out to be 57. But if you make it fun and make everybody a part of and positive, my dancers cannot make a mistake. I'm constantly, giving them positive feedback and making them feel like whatever they did is okay. They're going to make mistakes. Caller makes mistakes once in a while.
No.
But it's important to make it fun.
One thing you might like to hang on to as well. Some people like birthdays. They like to be put in the middle of the ring and nobody get around singing happy birthday. Some people don't. So I don't know what you do. I just don't do it. But what we did on a Monday, we did it the other way around. The person whose birthday it is brings the cookies. So we get good cookies we get chocolate cookies for big birthdays now. So it's another one you can look at in terms of your club and encouraging people. Okay, it's your birthday next week. We know because it's in the book. You bring the cookie. You don't have to tell them they do it. They start doing it automatically once somebody begins. And that's a good way because they feel good. Everybody else says, whose birthday is it tonight? Well, they're obviously very rich because these are very good biscuits. But, okay.
I was just here to pass the mic around, but my name is Bo Byerly. I'm from North Carolina, the Raleigh area. And a bit earlier, we were talking about special occasions for the new dancers and making them fit into the overall square dance community. One thing that we've been doing in the Raleigh area is that we've been getting together for newcomer dances. Now, we advertise these as newcomer dances. We don't say what level we're dancing or how many lessons you had to have had to come. And it doesn't say that the more experienced dancers can't come. It's just that we're having a dance Saturday night. Now, we're doing this for newcomers, but everybody's invited. Please come on down, and we will have a good time. And we charge at the door to pay for the hall and pay for the snacks. So it's not sponsored by one club. It's basically the three callers that had the idea to do this. And it's been well attended, and surprised me how many of the more experienced dancers attended the dance and came to see who the newcomers were. And I think they wanted to check them out and see how well they had come along in their lessons. We had some that had gone a little bit further along than others, and so naturally we had to call to the floor. But we made sure that everybody had a good time. My class went, and my class was probably a lot further along than the others because I did not start in September. And so my dancers have been dancing a much longer period of time. My dancers came back afterwards. They had a great time. They were dancing maybe half of what they were competent in doing, but they still had a great time. And that was the important thing, is they had a great time. They got to meet other newcomer dancers. They got to see what it was like kind of in the square dance community in our area. But they all had a good time, and I think that was the main thing.
We have an event each year in our association, and we named it the Friendship Dance. And this was the one for the new dancer. This was the old basic. And hopefully the idea was to get them around about May time, when they just completed the basic and they could come out and dance on a Saturday night. But what happened, we started it on the idea that the club callers would all be there. So the first 2 or 3 were great. The callers came, so the dancers came. I mentioned that earlier. They went out and they said their own dancers. Even if they didn't have any entry-level dancers, new dancers, they still brought dancers with them. And good, the callers were getting together on the stage and having a good time. And then for some reason it just sort of faded. And the only guys turning up were, so we said, the lesser-known callers. Maybe the only ones who'd got beginners. Less callers, less dancers. Till it got to such a stage, they booked a hall. No caller turned up. Because they didn't book a caller. They just said, come. So everybody, a small group of people, maybe 1 or 2 squares, actually turned up for the dance. But there wasn't a caller there. No caller, no equipment. Incredible. So we shook them up and we said, go back to what we did before. Every caller come. Bring your dancers with you. The following year, 15 squares. New dancers were there, old dancers were there. The old dancers thought it was absolutely fantastic. Best dance they'd been to for forever. But it was still only a basic dance. So we can still do it sometimes, but we've got to work hard. And that's part of that retention theme. You've got to work hard to retain them. Okay, Tom?
Yeah, a couple of the other things we do is we have a refreshment list where we get several people to agree to work together to bring food for everybody. And as this lady said, after we finish lessons, we do workshops for the next couple of months, once a week as opposed to twice a week. And I found that they really enjoy that. Again, it's a less stressful time. They already know the calls. They actually bring me the calls and say, these are the ones I want to work on tonight. And then we pack them up together and travel to certain clubs as a whole, take 3 or 4 squares. And as you say, as their teacher, I go with them and we just have a ball because they're more relaxed being surrounded with their fellow new students.
How do you explain an association, area association camp out weekend, something like 15, 20 squares? The base level of the weekend is plus. During the weekend in the daytime we do advanced A1 and A2 as well as plus. We do a plus workshop. 1 couple at the plus workshop. I used to think they were the best times ever, the workshops. But all these people at this weekend We're obviously advanced dancers. You know, it doesn't add up. How can you cater for it? You know, you book a hall, you take on the next hall, one couple comes into that workshop. We find 3 more couples. And we had the best workshop of the whole weekend, just looking after this one couple. Now that's retention. But it's hard work. But it's a lot of fun. And it's still fun dancing with newer dancers. And we forget that. Go out and get in the square with them. And it's just nice to get them through without pulling and pushing. Okay.
As we're talking this afternoon, again, with the research I did, I see one big theme running through all the conversation we have here today. Probably 3 words to summarize it, but fun, social connection, and friendship. At the risk of getting tomatoes thrown at me, have we as callers become too intrigued with choreography that we don't do our homework and present to our dancers a fun dance using a minimum number of calls? I'm not saying that we should not be able to do the upper levels if that's your desire. In life, there are people that are comfortable, and I use the analogy of using a press or a machine, same thing in and out every day. There are people that are comfortable with that. But there are also people that are not comfortable unless they're in leadership positions, being challenged, and etc. And that is our CEOs. You're always going to have that. That's life. But we have to look at where the majority of our dancers are. If we get them hooked early, fun, not difficult, then there are those people who will want to progress. We as callers, in my personal opinion, should not be pushing them because we want to start an advanced class or a plus class or whatever. But we should let them drift up at their pace when they want to. Now, you're always going to find those people that, you know, it's a challenge here, so they want to move on and they move too quick. That's life. But as a whole, I think we need to, in my humble opinion, and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, we need to look at this and take a serious look at it. I have said for years, and I've told callers, and I'm on a board of governors now, and I've told a lot of those guys, we are pushing our dancers too far. In Eastern Ohio, the entry level is plus. I had a call, when part of this research, I had a lady send me a note. You as a college teacher, what's your thoughts of reducing the teach time? I said, can it be done? I said yes and no. Is your club willing to back down and dance a strong mainstream? Or do you want to keep it where it is? She didn't answer me. We're running out of time. I appreciate your coming. And again, I think we can sum this all up in those 3 things I mentioned: fun, social connection, and friendship. Thank you. See you at the banquet tonight.
Thank you.